Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. The YouTube is live. We can begin. Mr. Chair, you are muted.
Thank you. Okay. Good afternoon. During COVID-19, Committee of Adjustment public hearings are being conducted virtually by electronic means through WebEx Webinar, an online digital platform, and streamed on the Toronto City Planning YouTube channel. Participants who have registered in advance will be able to make their presentations to the committee using WebEx Webinar, which is moderated by city staff. Anyone wishing to view the hearing may do so by watching on YouTube. Participants who have registered in advance will be connecting with their computer, tablet, smartphone, or telephone and have the opportunity of participating via video or audio only. All participants will automatically be muted on entry, and when your item is called, each participant will be unmuted by the moderator, one person at a time. We also ask that you mute your devices until you are called on to speak. Those participating by video appearance will be temporarily upgraded to panelists while your item is being held. During this time, your camera will be enabled and you will only be visible during your 5-minute allotted speaking time. And otherwise, you will be restored back to ordinary participant. And at all other times, your video will be disabled and you will be reinstated as an attendee. Committee of Adjustment staff will share presentations submitted in accordance with the written submission deadline, and members of the public and applicants are not allowed to use share screen or any other panelist controls during a video appearance. The host will remove you from the panelist role if you fail to respect this instruction. We acknowledge that the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Members and staff, in view of the announcement of the passing of Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, Queen of Canada, I would ask that you observe a moment of silence and sympathy at the loss for the members of the royal family and all those who will mourn throughout the Commonwealth. Thank you. In accordance with sections 45 and 53 of the Planning Act 1990 as amended, this meeting of the Committee of Adjustment of the City of Toronto is called to order. The Committee of Adjustment considers applications for variances from the provisions of the zoning that apply to the property, permissions to extend or alter lawful non-conforming uses, and consents to sever property to create new lots. Anyone in attendance today who wants to receive a copy of the decision of the committee on an application must submit a written request for a decision by email. Please ensure that you include your address, name, and email address, because the Committee of Adjustment and, in the event of an appeal, the Toronto Local Appeal Body will be sending notifications and appeal updates by email. Anyone in attendance, if you do not agree with the decision of the committee, decisions may be appealed to the Toronto Local Appeal Body, or in some limited circumstances, to the Ontario Land Tribunal, and appeal instructions are set out at the bottom of the decision of the committee. The hearing procedure. I'll call each item in the order listed in the agenda, starting at item number 17. And in making your submissions where an application is uncontested, the agent or applicant may proceed with a presentation if desired. Where the committee does not require a presentation, applicants are to advise the chair should they wish to speak to the committee. The committee may ask questions and or take the committee matter into the committee for a decision. Each speaker, including the applicant or agent, will be given a maximum of 5 minutes to address the committee, and the clock is in the room and will indicate when you're approaching 5 minutes. We'll ask you to wrap up. When addressing the committee, please start off by clearly stating your name and address for the record, and please remember to confine your remarks to the matters outlined in the application. The applicant or agent proceeds first and makes their presentation to the committee of the application. Please note that the committee may not entertain revisions made to proposals at the hearing today. The committee may decide to defer the application if being substantially revised in order to ensure that the revised application is accurate and that all those entitled to notice of the application have been informed of the changes. Then individuals either in support or opposed to the application will be invited to speak. Committee members may ask questions of each speaker after they finish their presentations. And when all other speakers have finished, the agent or applicant has an opportunity to, for a further 5 minutes, to answer those questions and rebut those issues that were raised by the neighbors. That will then mark the end of the discussion. The application is then taken into the committee for a decision. Members and staff, does anyone have any declarations of interest to declare with respect to the items on this afternoon's agenda? If none to declare, do not have any deferral requests. We have a very short afternoon session, so nothing else to deal with. We can call the first item, which is item number 17, 49 BURR Avenue. It's an application to construct a new dwelling. There are 7 variances. We have a cover letter. Planning has given us a report for information. Forestry requesting condition 3, 4 letters of support, and the materials from previous hearing this matter looks like it was deferred on June 9th, 2022. And there's one speaker for this application. And sorry, there's 2 speakers, Paul Vicente or Clarissa Lopez at 49 BURR, the applicants. And as well, we have an area resident from 44 Beerland registered to speak. So looks like Paul Vicente is going to be the agent on behalf of himself. He's also the owner. Appearing not by video or no, by video.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Paul, and I'm the owner of 49 BURR. And I requested a referral on June the 9th to address city planning's concerned with proposed variances for lot coverage, length, and depth. And we eliminated those variances by an excavating the rear deck, making it an excavated. And I consulted with the city planning, and they were in agreement with the changes, and they were not worried about the other minor variances that I have. And as you can see on the report by planning there, it states that, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, so that's right. Community planning sets out exactly what you said. You went away, you made changes. They summarize what the variance changes were, and they feel it's an improvement, and they find it minor in nature. So let's see if any of the members have any questions for you. And if none, I don't see any. We can hear then from the neighbor who was asked to speak on this matter. Mr. Anthony Zanardo at 44 Veerland Drive. And you'll have a chance to respond. So Veerland looks like you, Mr. Zanardo, you're directly behind.
Yeah. Okay, I guess you can hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, good. No, I don't have any issues with the variances or the proposal, but I'm looking at the site plan, and I don't see any difference in the original, which was from June 9th, in terms of the length. I mean, the length seems to be the same to me. So there's no variances being asked for the length, but I assume that with the unexcavated back end, that satisfies the length requirement on the bylaw, on the zoning, because it says 17 meters building length and 19 meters building length, depth rather, and it said the same on the original. So there's really no difference in the actual length of the house, is there?
Okay, so sir, the way this works, you give your submissions and he responds out. I or he don't answer your questions as you go along. But it appears that's what he did say, that he was able to eliminate those variances. And if you've read the community planning report, they seem satisfied. But he will respond to you again to reiterate. If you want to keep discussing that or keep going, if you have anything else you'd like to ask. Or
Yeah, no, my only concern is that we both have relatively smaller lots, and I have a very short lot, and you know, the imposition or the building of a two-story home will create maybe some privacy issues and so on. So I'm looking at you know, putting up some trees perhaps. But the other thing was the coverage. Does that include the shed?
Okay,
When it
sir,
says 37%.
I'll let him answer that as well.
Okay.
It says, I can read from the staff letter, which it says that the previous lot coverage, length, and depth were impacted by an excavated cold room located beneath the rear yard deck. The applicant removed the excavated cold room, which resulted in the elimination of length and depth variances while reducing the lot coverage. Staff note the proposed lot coverage of 37% is inclusive of an existing rear yard shed that would not create negative impact. So it includes the shed, and that's how we eliminated it by unexcavating that area. It no longer counted as length or depth. That's why you don't see a change in the plan.
Okay, I'm
So
okay
I'll let him. I'm not earning a fee from this, so I'll let Mr. Vicente. He can reiterate or respond to. Is there anything else you're concerned with?
No, that was it. I think you've answered the questions.
Okay, so I'll turn it over to Mr. Vicente. Sir?
Yeah, so the building length and the depth, they were eliminated by closing that cold cellar, so making it an excavated, and the shed is part of the lot coverage as well. So I don't have anything else to add to that.
Okay, great. So members, any questions, or is someone ready for a motion? Mr. Taylor?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm satisfied that the requested variances meet the four tests under the Planning Act. And I move approval subject to urban forestry condition number 3.
Okay, thank you. And planning was just for information. Seconded for that, Ms. Alderson, thank you. All in favor? Unanimous approval. Okay, thank you, Mr. Vicente, and thank you for participating, Mr. Zanardo. Next application is item 18A, B, and C, 427 VALERMO Drive. It's an application to sever the lot into two undersized lots, and on each side, on one side, part A, part 1, to redevelop as the site of a new detached dwelling with an attached garage requiring variances to the bylaw, I believe 9. And on the other side, part 2, to the redevelop as the site of a new detached dwelling with a detached garage in the rear yard, requiring 11 variances to the zoning bylaw. We have an arborist report, engineering construction services memo, and forestry. And we have urban forestry looking for conditions 3 and 4. This matter was deferred when it was before the committee on October the 14th, 2021. Apparently, I was able to glean that from the package. We have the previous materials. And the speaker for this application is Eddie Perez.
Chair?
Yes.
Chair, it's Palmer here. Forestry is actually asking for a deferral. Do we have to deal with that before we hear the matter, or do we just accept that as a comment and deal with the hearing?
Yeah, Madam Secretary Treasurer, what do you, in the alternative, they're saying, you know, it's in, just like normally it's denied. I don't believe we consider that as a separate deferral request, or do we?
Well, unless the applicant can address it, like how.
Okay. Yeah, this issue about okay, so we'll let Mr. Perez deal with that in his submission.
Hello, good afternoon, Chairman and committee members. Eddie Perez. As per the deferral for the forestry, if you can put up the arborist report site plan up on the screen, I can explain to you. There is no trees that are being affected. They're all being protected, and we are not going to remove any trees at all. So I don't know where the they're coming up with the trees are going to be removed or injured. According to our arborist report, there isn't going to be anything removed or injured. If you can see it, they're all highlighted in squares there, and none of them are within the driveways or within the building distances that we're going to be excavating. So there's no need for it to be deferred. I'll take care of the matter with them when I apply for permits.
Okay, I don't know if this is an automatic, and look at the memo dated March the 6th. It says, as outlined, approval of the requested consent to sever may result in the installation of utilities that results in the appraisal. It's not they're talking about the utilities. I don't know if you have to bring me more utilities if you split the lot. So I don't think they're doing it specifically based on your plan, but that's just my interpretation.
Well, I feel that
Madam Secretary Treasurer, I don't think they specifically, they talk to say it through bringing in utilities and they identify the tree. You're telling us it's not an issue.
In that drawing,
I spoke to the arborist, and he said, I sent him that memo too as well. He said that with the pruning and that, there wouldn't be any issues with that.
Hey, Mr. Kamarick, you were just going to weigh in?
just coming back on that drawing, is tree number 3 not being removed? I assume it's as of right, it's not required by.
Well, there's one that's not highlighted, which is number 5. That one's going to get removed.
Number 5, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, that one's undersized. That one's going to get removed. That's
Now that we dealt with that, let's not, no bad pun, but the forest for the trees, let's look at the application. We also have the application sever the lot and have 9 and 11 variances. So the tree is just one part of it. So let's restart the clock and let Mr. Perez start a new presentation based on this application. Sever.
We've been working on
houses.
Yeah, we've been working diligently with planning department. We've made some changes. The changes are all shown on the existing variances that are now. We had done a waiver previously, but they're all been addressed. It's all been put on the drawings. As for the corner lot, originally we had a smaller side yard, so we increased the side yard on that to 1.07. And then also we made some changes from the previous drawing as per consultation with planning. We've been working diligently with them, and they are in agreement with us that what we propose is now in keeping with the area. Also, 425 VALERMO, for A and B, they were both went to committee with the same variances as we have. Also, 435 as well, 452 A and B, 452 A and B. So what we're asking for is not out in keeping with the area. It's been asked for in that area, and there's a lot of severances on VALERMO, as you can see, if you go into the Google Maps and that.
Okay.
So what we feel,
yeah.
we feel what we're proposing is very minor in nature.
Okay, so that's the reason why we haven't heard from community planning or any of the neighbors. And now I do recall the name of the street. I think we've had quite a number of applications brought recently, I recall, to sever. So let's see, does anyone have any questions for Mr. Perez, or is someone ready for a motion? I think Mr. Franco Romano has had several before us in VALERMO recently. Mark, thank you.
Okay, to me, this is a borderline one, but seeing as planning is in agreement, I'm going to support it and move for approval. I'm a little confused. I think forestry is requesting conditions 3 and 1, and I do believe there is a city tree there. So
Did I say 3 and 4?
no, in their report attached to the materials, they're also asking for condition 1 for a city tree. So I'm going to make it subject to forestry condition 1 and 3, and subject to the usual ECS conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. We have a seconder for that motion. Mr. Taylor? All in favor? Okay, we have unanimous approval. Thank you, Mr. Perez.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Two. Okay, application number 19 is 5 Carson Street. It's an application to construct a new industrial building, and there are 3 variances. We have a cover letter. Planning has provided us with 2 conditions of approval regarding a landscape plan and an LC, and we have 3 letters of opposition. This matter was deferred from October 14, 2021, and Urban Forestry is looking for, in this case, for conditions 2 and 3. The speaker on this application is Alexander Ilievsky, and we have, looks like we have a whole team here. We have the owner on the line available for questions, and we have, on behalf of a neighbor, lawyer David Nelligan, speaking on behalf of a neighbor, David Nelligan from Etobicoke. So let's first hear from guests. We have the agent and the neighbor's legal representative.
So the design of the building hasn't changed since the.
Sir, can you, you're Mr.
I'm sorry, I'm the
introduce
applicant.
yourself, please.
Alexander Ilievsky, applicant and representing the owners at 5 Carson. Speaking on behalf of the owners, the design of the building has not changed since the original application, but the site plan was changed to address concerns by planning, and we have obtained their agreement with our proposal, subject to the conditions that they've imposed, which we are in agreement with. Looking at the forestry condition as well, condition number 3, I think part of our landscape proposal, which you haven't seen as it is very recent development, does provide for trees on city property. So we'll deal with that. We are in agreement with that as well. We have taken the time since our last, since the deferral to speak with Mr. Nelligan and reach agreement with owners of number 3 Carson. After 6 months of negotiation, the effort seemed abandoned to us, so we moved forward to hearing on that basis. And I think our proposal is pretty simple. We have 3 variances. 2 of them are codependent. On the north side, we have a variance for a reduction in the landscape strip from 3 meters to 2 meters, and reduction in the setback from 3 meters to 2 meters. One can't exist without the other. And also a setback on the east side, which is the rear setback. Planning agrees that these are small and agreeable, and don't really have much to add to that other than to answer questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Ilievsky before we go on to hear from Mr. Nelligan? We understand is here on behalf of the neighbor number 3. There's also several opposition letters. It's like residential. We do have the letter from Aaron Burles as well. Okay, so if no questions, let's hear from Mr. Nelligan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and members of the committee. My name is David Nelligan, and I'm here on behalf of the owner of 3 Carson Street, which is the property immediately to the south. Since 2011, our client has operated a recording studio on the site, which produces audio recordings for the OVO sound record label, which is co-owned by our client and the recording artist Drake. This studio is responsible for the production of each of Drake's studio albums. It's a significant cultural and economic driver for the city of Toronto, and the music scene, independent music scene and hip hop music scene in Toronto, which generates billions of dollars of revenue for the local economy. Now, due to the nature of this existing use, the studio at 3 Carson operates highly tuned audio equipment that is particularly sensitive to noise, vibration, and dust. Any unnecessary generation of dust from truck circulation, outdoor loading and staging, or outdoor storage could be fatal to the existing operation. Now, I was encouraged by the deferral of this application back in October and hoped that it would give the applicant an opportunity to address concerns. And while Mr. Ilyevsky is correct that we did speak, no agreement was ultimately reached. And ultimately, the application that's before you does not address any of the concerns my client has raised and actually has made it worse.
Okay, can I just interject for 1 minute?
Yes.
Just, I don't want to interrupt your presentation just in terms of where you're going or where you think my thought process is. Is this, I'm looking at, we got 3 little variances.
Mm-hmm.
It's not it's an industrial, I guess it's a permitted use. ZR zone, E10, you know, why is OVO have a very technical recording studio? Just no one's performing brain surgery there either. Like if you need, if such a precise use, or you hear of CNC machines, or so, why are you next to it in a zone that can potentially have as of right? Like if they didn't have these little setbacks, we wouldn't be here, right? But they're allowed to be there. So I'm just, my only question is like, you know, why is this OVO studio in an industrial zone where you can have a noisy neighbor?
Well, I'm happy to address
Anyway,
all
that's just where I'm just headed, that we're here to look at for 3 variances. We're not here to justify the use here.
Of course, and just to that point, I'll note that the studio use is also a permitted employment use in an employment area, and exists as a right, and is existing and has been for 11 years now. And you're correct, sir, that you know, on its face, it's difficult to see how a setback variance with respect to the opposite property line would impact my client. But that's why it's important.
Okay, I just wanted you to proceed that's where I'm thinking, is that we're here for variances. We're not here to permit this use. And believe me, I'm a big fan. I'm an old guy, but I'm a big fan of hip hop music, although on record. So, but that's where I look at, and if there's commentary at the end, I'll tell you about a situation I was involved with the committee like 20 years ago.
Okay.
Very similar type situation.
Happy to hear it and happy to explain, you know, the precise.
Just go ahead. I'll give you an extra minute and a half. But
I appreciate it. Now, so you know, because it's 3 discrete variances that on their face don't seem to impact on my client, it's important to actually look at the reasons behind the variance. Now, the reason that the applicants need a variance from the setback requirements is because otherwise they would not have enough room for vehicle circulation and outside storage facilities and loading facilities. And in their words on their application material, they said, this site cannot function without the variances requested. Now, in my mind, sir, this is a sure sign that the site is ill-suited for the proposed development and that it represents an overdevelopment of the site. Now, the revised proposal improves the setback condition on the north, but it does so at the expense of shrinking the circulation and loading areas by 2 meters. So this will result in more challenging truck movements, more idling, more noisy reverse beeping, and more dust. Now, there have been no circulation diagrams provided by the applicant, no details on how construction materials will be moved from the loading area inside and outside, or and no details on whether any construction materials will be stored outside. There's also been no mitigation measures proposed through this application, including noise attenuating fencing, agreements on scheduling noisy activities, or any other measures to address not only the concerns of my client, but the 3 long-standing residential uses to the east. Now, I'd like to speak about the 4 tests of the Planning Act, because that's why we're here. And you're right, this is an employment area, but the official plan requires that development in an employment area will contribute to the creation of competitive, attractive, highly functional employment areas. And the key here is by mitigating the potential adverse impacts or effects of noise, vibration, air quality, and or other facilities and other businesses. Section 4.6.7 of the official plan. This application does not meet this general intent and purpose of that section of the official plan. Further, the OP also speaks to promoting and protecting cultural industries in Toronto, and this application threatens a very important and prominent cultural industry. With respect to the zoning bylaw, the setback and landscaping regulations are intended to protect against overdevelopment and to ensure that development does not adversely impact on its neighbors. This proposal fails to meet the general intent and purpose of these regulations of the zoning. And again, while this is an employment area and certain as of right permissions exist, this proposal seeks to insert itself next to an established cultural use and 3 long-standing existing residential dwellings. The applicant has made no effort to recognize its surrounding context and provided no accommodation to reduce or mitigate its impacts on these neighbors who were here long before them. The proposal may make sense in a different context, but it is not desirable or appropriate for the development of this land. And finally, with respect to whether it's minor, dust and other particulates produced from the operation of the proposed development will prevent the studio from operating with open windows and could threaten the integrity of the studio's HVAC equipment. Noise and vibration from truck circulation, reversing trucks, external loading and unloading will have a clear impact on the highly calibrated recording equipment and may prevent live recordings during the operation of the neighboring business. So without mitigation, and again, no mitigation has been offered in this application, the impacts of the development would be anything but minor. Now, I just want to briefly address on my closing point. Mr. Ilievsky has suggested that the design of the building hasn't changed. The site plan provided shows that the second and third floor of the building have increased in size and GFA, although this is not reflected in the floor plans or the elevation. So there have been changes to the application that have not been addressed in the plans, and we're a little bit confused about the nature of those. Anyway,
Okay.
with respect, sir, I suggest that this application and the effect of the 3 variances being requested do not meet the 4 tests of the Planning Act and should be refused.
Okay, thank you for that, and I apologize for just wanted to hear you. So again, for my last question before in the middle, so this is the zone is employment. It's not industrial, doesn't permit heavy industrial, obviously. There used to be something called prestige employment, or like I don't know in terms of where this fits in, but if it's, I guess it is a permitted use because it's not showing as one of the variances. But the issue is, in the situation I was involved with, it was a committee many years ago. Mayor Miller was in office, and there was a use to put some big entertainment bars and restaurants and studios, and very important for the Toronto economy, hugely important for the movie industry to support it. And some poor guy came in and he had just invested millions in some kind of a rubber burning operation in the middle of off the lake or something. And he was here. The difference is the noxious use was there first, and they were going to go in. He said, "You're going to go in, and then the first thing they're going to do is start complaining about the smell." And so here the noxious use is first, and is the obligation, to deal with what's there first. Anyway, that's what I have to say. Let's see if anyone else has any questions.
I have just a comment to make. You referred to noise levels throughout your presentation, and sound studios are typically very well insulated from noise. Want to comment on that?
Yeah, this studio is state of the art. It has every possible insulation, every possible technology employed to ensure that the best quality sound is preserved. And the noise of trucks beeping and construction material clanging around is going to have an impact, despite all that the mitigation on my client side. They recognize that, you know, there are employment uses that will continue and that will likely make noise, but the official plan requires that those incoming developments provide some level of mitigation to not negatively impact existing businesses, and that's what my client is looking for here.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Nelligan?
Yeah, I just want to clarify specifically which variances you are opposed to.
Specifically,
It sounds to me like you're pretty much opposed to the use as opposed to the variances being proposed.
the most obvious variance that is triggered is the north yard setback, and only because the only way that this development can be built is with that setback approved, because otherwise they cannot accommodate the required vehicle circulation. But
Talking a difference of one meter?
well,
Is that what it is?
the original proposal was 0 meters. They've reduced that, which caused my client some concern as well. That they've reduced that by 2 meters. So
So you would
circulation area
prefer
is
0
reduced.
meter.
I would prefer 0 meter, but obviously my overall point is that what they are trying to achieve on this site cannot be achieved without variances being requested. They cannot build this without
Thousands of
the
applications that
variance.
cannot be achieved without variances. That doesn't mean that the variances aren't valid.
That's true, but where there is an impact as a result of the variances being applied, the fourth test of the minor variance or of the Planning Act is triggered, because there will be adverse impacts that, in my opinion, are not minor. Similarly, the third test that is not desirable for this location, that third test says desirable and appropriate for the development of the
Well, I
land.
guess that's
And
a question.
this land cannot accommodate the use that the applicant is proposing.
Okay. My comment with that, couldn't he not make the building a meter shorter, eliminate, and my question is, again, in fairness, I'm very sympathetic, but like Mr. Krameric's going, we deal with the variances. So even if you complied, you admitted yourself, and what you said is that it's more dust, more vibration, but you admitted earlier on that this use is a very specialized use and can't have really any. And Ms. Aldridge talk about, is the obligation to insulate for all of that, or, I don't know where you locate in Toronto, but, it's not an industrial area, it's an employment area, but it permits this build. Do we know what the use of the building is going to be? It's going to be I can't remember now. We know the use could always change, but it's going to be trucks coming and going 24/7.
I believe a movie soundstage. That's
Sorry,
No, I think there's a millwork involved. It sounds like it's a milling shop.
Oh,
The
really?
applicant can answer better than I can, but they operate a construction and landscape operation, and there
Right.
will be
Okay. So
a warehouse and storage of their construction materials and some fabrication on the
Yeah,
main floor, and then office uses on the second and third.
Yeah, it's a difficult situation. It's difficult. So anyway, but that is the issue. The committee has to look at variances, not the use. Anyway, let's go back. We have to go back to Mr. Olievsky to have him respond. So and here's one thing I want him to respond to, Mr. Olievsky. This matter was deferred last October 14th, long time ago. What's happened since then? And you said in your original statement that someone say about you reached some agreement with the neighbor? That's what I thought I heard you say. Obviously not. Anyway, let's go back to Mr. Olievsky. Go ahead,
Hi,
sir.
thank you. What's happened since since the beginning of the project? Mr. Nelligan was kind enough to contact us ahead of the hearing and ahead of his submitting of the original letter of objection. That was on October 1st, 2021.
Yep.
After which we engaged in discussions with them. It is true that my client would have preferred a 0 setback on the north side, and we thought that we could work together to reach an agreeable position where they're satisfied that the activities on at 5 Carson will not adversely impact the activities at 3 Carson, and in exchange that they would provide support that we could leverage with the planning department to obtain their agreement as well to have a zero lot line. And we, in the process, there was a lot of opportunity. There were several discussions and emails, and as well as a letter sent out in January of 22 by my client to Mr. Nelligan, describing exactly what the operation is going to be consisting of on this site, stating, for example, that there will not be any asphalt, concrete, aggregate, or similar materials. That transport trucks and tractor trailers will not be used here. As you can appreciate, the site is also too small for this kind of operation, so there isn't going to be anything larger than a cube van, and assuring them that there will not be any excessive dust, noise, or vibration resulting from the operation. In addition, with agreeing to also relocate the parking further, the parking that's currently on the south side further north, and to provide a higher barrier fence on the south side. So the details of the operation were provided to Mr. Nelligan, following which he provided a draft minutes of settlement type agreement for both parties to sign. That was in March of 2022. After taking a long time, he indicated that his client had COVID in the meantime. We accepted this delay on that basis. Once we received the draft minutes of settlement, there were provisions in there that in effect moved the goalposts. There were provisions there that were not agreeable to my client. So we sent back a markup that was done on March 24th, 2020. And there has been dead silence since then. That we had not received any communication back from Aird Burles. The next communication we received was in May of 2022, objecting to an application with the forestry department to remove a boundary tree. So we took 6 months to come up to negotiate some sort of agreement that would be beneficial to both parties, that would be a win-win. And in the end, there was no response. So we could only deem that the effort was abandoned on their part. And we moved forward in the interest of time, because as you can appreciate, it's been nearly a year. And my client needs to have this built. Another point to that is that currently, South Central Incorporated, the owners of this property, are located on Lakeshore East under the Gardner. They have a sprawling lot. They do engage in various degrees of construction, everything from historic restoration to a fairly heavy construction. And this lot is not intended to replace their operation on Lakeshore entirely. It cannot, as it is not large enough. So this particular facility is only intended to support their millworking and carpentry operations, the finer end of their business, and the heavier construction related facilities that they require are elsewhere in Peel region. And they also have additional facilities on Islington currently that I think they indicated that they wanted to keep. So this is a very focused operation on only the finer aspects of their business, the details of which were communicated to Mr. Nelligan and agreed. They were agreed in principle. There were some legal provisions in their draft minutes of settlement that were questioned or not agreeable by my client.
Okay, yeah.
Which were indicated in the
okay. So you reached an impasse and nothing was signed. Okay, okay.
And nothing was signed.
That's fine.
In addition to the with respect to vibration, we are within. Metrolinx has provided commentary on this file as well. We are within the 300-meter right-of-way The property at 3 Carson is within 100 meters of the railroad. So if the railroad does not adversely impact their operation, surely some trucks will also not impact their operation. Some cube vans on the side of 5 Carson will also not impact it. The building is located a good distance away from number 4 Staffordshire, and there is a buffer between 114 30th Street and our building as well, which is they have a detached garage with a 0 lot line on the 0 setback on the north and west sides, and a small, I think it's a 0.5 meter setback on the south side. So they do have actually a building on their own property that provides a fair distance from.
Sir, if you can also wrap up because you're over 6 minutes, but
that's really it. I think you know, our activities are not out of line, and anything that any way this lot is developed is going to generate you know, is going to result in a building and generate some traffic.
Okay, and
so I don't think we're asking for too much.
Okay, thank you.
And,
Thank you.
I hope you will agree.
Okay, thank you. Seriously, I'll ask you a question. The rail line, where the rail, I can't see on the location map. So you're saying that number 3 is within certain proximity of the rail
within
line?
100 meters. It's within 100 meters of the south lot line of 3 Carson. So there's one building between Staffordshire and the rail line.
Okay, thank you. Members, questions for Mr. Nelligan and or Mr. Ilievsky? Or let's take it in for a discussion with some commentary, please. Mr. Mark?
Well, I mean, this has been a theme for today. On the surface, the variances look minor, and it's a permitted use. It's a desirable thing to continue industrial uses, which have been fading in Toronto, and should be encouraged. It's unfortunate the 2 neighbors didn't come to an agreement. I think the issue is you can't say the building has to have a 0 variance. You know, if he had told me that his issue was the rear yard setback, then I would have engaged in conversation with the applicant and saying, can we accommodate that by 1 meter? But that's not the issue. At least that's not the issue that was expressed by the deputant from 3 Carson. So my inclination is to support the application.
Okay, so that's a motion to approve.
Unless anyone else has any other comments.
Yeah. Any comment? Well, there is urban forestry conditions.
Yeah. If there's no comments, then I have to move a motion to approve, subject to forestry conditions 2 and 3, and the 2 planning conditions.
Thank you. So I have a seconder for that motion, Mr. Taylor. All in favor? Any comment, Mr. Taylor?
No, I think we got beyond the scope of our responsibilities here, which are to assess the impact and reasonableness of minor variances requested. And I believe there's no question that they are reasonable and minor. And use is not within our purview. And it just so happens to be that this proposal complies with the zoning, the employment industrial zoning and the core employment area OP designation. So, yeah.
Okay,
No
thank you.
issues.
Okay, so seconded, all in favor? Okay, the applicant is unanimously approved. Thank you to Mr. Nelligan and thank you to Mr. Ilievsky. And so it goes, we'll move on. Our next application is item number 20, 78 Gracefield Avenue. It's an application for a new detached dwelling with an attached garage. With 7 variances, we have a covering letter, ravines and national feature protection ones, condition 1. This matter was deferred from May 5th, 2022. Planning is recommending refusal. And in the additional materials, we have Councillor Nunziata in support, and we have letters of support. And Urban Forestry, I believe, also looking for conditions 2 and 3. So the speaker for this application is Dominic Gooley, agent, as well we have an alternative agent ready to speak. So please advise looks like that's one of the owners. So I assume Mr. Gooley is speaking.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Dominic Gully, and I'm speaking on behalf of Joseph Dominelli for 78 Gracefield Avenue. I hope, Chair, you've given me the opportunity to recap and bring you up to date as to where we are, particularly since we are still on a waiver. As you may recall, we were before your committee on May the 5th with an application which requested some variances. At the time, we asked for a deferral, which your committee kindly granted, in order for us to further review and refine our plans, attempt to bring our proposal more in line with the bylaws, and confirm accurately variances that we would require. Over the last 4 months, our design and application has undergone some constructive changes that make the application more appropriate. We are here before you today with an application that requests 7 variances from the original 12. The proposal and application is more in keeping with the neighborhood and will positively contribute to the renewal and regeneration that the neighborhood is beginning to undergo. We are on a waiver, but are very confident that we have identified all the necessary variances and also understand the risk that we are taking by moving forward in this manner. I would like to briefly comment on the 7 variances being requested. Variance number 1, nominal height variance from 7.20 to 7.58. No objections by staff. Variance 2, building length. Variance 3, building depth. Variance 4, platform. I will come back to those 3 variances later, Chair. Variance number 5, nominal driveway increase from 5.8 to 6 meter. No objection by staff. Positive report of support from Transportation Services. Variance number 6, nominal flat roof height increase from 8 meters to 8.6 meters. No objection by staff. Variance number 7, nominal first floor height variance of 1.50 to 1.83. No objections by staff. With respect to variance number 2, 3, and 4, I would like to reference the 3-page planning staff report of August 31st. Page 1 comprehensively recites the application to the committee. Page 2 and 3 recites the OP policies and the zoning bylaw requirements. The evaluation of the subject application is in total essence in the last paragraph on page 3. In that paragraph, Chair, the planning department once again recites the variances. And following identifying the variances that we are requesting with respect to length, depth, and platform, their opinion is, quote, the proposed building length, building depth, and front platform area will create adverse effects on the adjacent neighbors. Contrary to the intent of the official plan, these variances are not minor in nature. Chair, that's the sum total of the planning opinion. Briefly, Chair and Committee, I would like to speak to those items. The length and depth numerically appear excessive, but when you consider the specifics of this lot, this is where the adjudication is required. Its area, the minimum required lot area for this zone is 550 square meters. This lot has an area of 2,993 square meters. The frontage requirement for the zone is 15 meters. That's the minimum 15 meters. This lot has a frontage of 22.65 meters. The depth of this lot is 132.17 meter, 433 feet. The coverage permitted under the zoning is 30%. The proposed coverage is 50%. Chair, I would also like to reference the current building lengths at number 78, the current property, 25 meters. For number 80 to the east, 24 meters. For number 76 to the west, 25 meters. Side yard requirements are met. We meet and exceed front and rear yard by more than 3 times the bylaw requirement. No variances are required for GFA, FSI, or coverage. TRCA in a correspondence dated April the 27th advised that they have no objections to the variances and the variances have no impact on TRCA policies and state that they have no objections to the application. Transportation Services in a correspondence dated May 2nd, 2022 recommended approval subject to conditions which are principally standard conditions acceptable to us. We accept the conditions being imposed by Urban Forestry and Ravine and Natural Feature Protection in their September 7th, 2022 report. There are letters of support from the neighbors at number 76 to the east and number 80 to the west. We also have a letter of support from Ward Councillor Francis Nunziata. Chair, in conclusion, I know that I've gone over by a minute and a half. The variances are being requested are reasonable, appropriate, and desirable for the development of a house to measure it with a specific lot and specific site context. Allowing the variances does not impact negatively on anyone, does not compromise the character of the street and neighborhood, but rather creates renewal and protection of the neighborhood. The one thing that I also want to add, Chair, is with respect to the platform. If you will just bear with me one moment, the planning department states the proposed length, depth, and front platform area would create adverse impact. The front platform is inserted into the building. If you look at the front facade of the building, that platform is set back minimum of 3 meters. The only way you'd be looking at a neighbor would be from a very obtuse angle. You can only look into their own bedrooms on either side, Chair. There's no adverse impact on any neighbor. There's no overlook issue. There's no privacy issue with respect to that. Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry that I ran over my time by 2 minutes and 33 seconds. Sorry, Chair, I can't hear you.
Was it? Hello?
Hi.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah, that was a very good point because it's not a protruding balcony that's typical, and you wonder if they even realize that when they write the report. Can we get up the location map? Just have a question. So you look where 78 Gracefield is on the location map. It's north-south street lot. The lots, 2 lots over to the west, and all the lots to the east are large and back onto the ravine. And then it looks like there's a smaller. Yeah, it's very what you put up. Like there's no contrast, but looking over westward, 2 lots over, then the configuration completely changes. Is that the point you're trying to make? This is a very, very, very deep lot, as are the neighboring lots, backing onto a ravine or greenbelt, Queen's Greenbelt. And that's what the city failed to acknowledge.
Exactly, Chair. You've made the point that from where the street begins to curve and easterly, all those lots are very, very deep. They're 400-foot lots. Even on the opposite side, on the Maple Leaf side, they back into this TRCA land as well. Those lots are also deep, and they also have homes that are 25 to 30 meter in length and depth.
Okay, and we have no objection from area residents on this application, is that correct?
We do not have any letters of objection. We actually have 2 letters of support
Right,
from neighbors on either side.
okay. Members, any questions for Mr. Gooley, or is someone ready for a motion?
Just a quick comment. Would like to thank the presenter for setting out the length of the neighboring houses, because I was trying to figure that out from the site plan and I could not, because the property to the west was not located on it. But I get that now. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mark.
Okay, so ready for a motion? No other speakers on this.
I'm happy to make a motion.
Okay.
If no one else is. I'm afraid I'm going to oppose community planning in their request to have this refused. I think this is a reasonable house for the size of lot, and I would move for approval subject to urban forestry conditions. It looks like numbers 1 and 2 and 3. Is that possible?
So it's forestry conditions 2 and 3, and then a ravine condition number
Ravine.
1.
Ah, okay. So that's my addition.
Okay,
Ravine.
seconded for Ms. Alderson's motion. Mr. Taylor, thank you. All in favor? Looks like we got unanimous approval. Thank you, Mr. Gooley, for your presentation, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you,
It was
Chair.
an excellent presentation.
We have
Thank you.
2 applications, well, against the negative planning report. That's what you're up against. Item number 21 is 44 Beaverbrook Avenue. It was previously deferred from June 9th. It's for various additions, 2-story west side, including an addition to the existing garage, a 2nd-story addition above the existing dwelling, and a new rear covered deck. There are 8 variances, and we have presentation materials. We have a presentation materials and present materials from the previous hearing. And the speaker on this application is Marco Vieira. Welcome, Mr. Vieira.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Marco Vieira here at 257 Dunraven Drive. I'm the agent and the designer for this application. Not sure if you require a brief presentation, but maybe just to bring you up to as to why.
Yeah, just bring us up to date on what's happened since the matter is deferred.
Sure. So the deferral came because of a missed variance that had to do with an existing parking width dimension of the current garage. Because we're extending where the current garage is forward, we required a variance for that. Previously to the deferral, we had discussed our proposal with planning. They showed concern with 3 variances, one being lot coverage, FSI, and the front yard setback, which we've resolved. We've reduced the footprint, and it had to do with extension to the proposed covered deck in the back that had a patio that was covered. So we've removed that. And the front yard setback was tied to a decorative overhang along the proposed 2nd story. Existing footprint of the house and the main portion of the house at the 1st floor is not being altered. It's changing, it's same. It's just the decorative overhang on the 2nd floor that triggered increase in the front yard setback. So we believe that the changes are beneficial to our proposal in keeping with the area. We do believe that the proposed variances are minor, and based on the size and changing neighborhood, we believe that our proposal will fit nicely into this neighborhood, and we ask the committee to consider the approval for the proposed variances.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Vieira. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Vieira? And if not, is someone ready to weigh in with a motion? Mr. Taylor?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm satisfied the variances meet the 4 tests under the Planning Act, and I move approval without conditions.
Thank you. Seconded by Mr. Mark. All in favor?
Sorry, I've got a note that some transportation conditions. Is that incorrect?
That is correct. There's 3 conditions with regards to notes to be added on our site plan.
Okay, and you have no issues with, those conditions?
Absolutely not.
Okay, then I'll second it with the addition of the
Friendly
transfer.
amendment. Okay, friendly amendment. Thank you. Take that as seconded. All in favor? Unanimous approval based on that friendly amendment. And thank you, Mr. Vieira. Have a wonderful afternoon. Last application of the afternoon is item number 22. And then there's the delegated consent. But item number 22 is a matter was deferred from the July 28, 2022 hearing, 360 Ames Avenue, an application to permit a bingo hall. Whereas pursuant to the bylaw, proposed place of assembly, bingo hall is not a permitted use in E-zone. Another E-zone application. And all we have before us are the supporting material, a IBI group presentation materials. And it says 9:30 in the morning, but I guess it was this afternoon. And we have the materials from the previous hearing. And registered to speak, we have Stephen Albanese, the agent from IBI Group, as well as Francis Nunziata, area councillor, City of Toronto. Mr. Albanese. Do we have Mr. Albanese on the phone? Video, the phone?
I'm unable to share my screen, so it was shared with clerks last week.
We can put up what's been filed, that the report supporting this majority stuff. Can you put that up on the board while Mr. Albanese presents? Yeah, you can't share a screen, but they can share what you filed.
Yeah, this is it. Thank you very much.
What page the moderator, if you want, whatever you want on the screen, sir.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So my name is Stephen Albanese, 55 St. Clair, representative of planning agent for Delta Bingo, the applicant. So I'll quickly run through it, cognizant of my 5 minutes. What makes this an interesting site is by very nature the site context as well as the split zoning. So surrounding the site to the north, Gardner Expressway, to the south, Evans, to the west, Kipling, and to the east, some industrial uses. Next slide, please. The OP context is core employment. And the zoning context, next slide, third slide, it's split. So this is what makes it a little bit interesting. So bingo hall is permitted on the western side of the site, fronting Kipling, and not permitted on the eastern side of the site under the 569/2013 zoning bylaw. The applicant, Delta Bingo, is looking to adaptively reuse the existing building for a bingo hall use. And purchased the site in good faith, given the permissions on the western side of the site. So that's the requested variance before you. It's really a use variance. There's no proposed changes to the building footprint or any built form related matters. Next slide. From a use perspective, I'll just turn your attention to the gross floor areas here. So what's being proposed is about 46,000 square feet of a bingo hall use, 24,000 square feet of an office use, 3,700 square feet of a commercial retail use, for a total of 75,000 square feet. Now that's all within the existing footprint of the existing building that's currently on the site. Since the deferral, we've removed the 2 parking variances that were proposed in late July. And so parking variance is required any longer. Next slide, please. One of obviously the 4 tests. So is the application minor in nature? We believe that it is, as it's creating conformity on the entirety of the site between the 2 zoning bylaws which apply. It's allowing for the as of right use to be permitted and harmonized throughout the site. Obviously, as I mentioned, we're not seeking any amendments to built form provisions or anything such as those. And given the history of bingo halls and bingo hall uses permitted in employment areas or existing employment areas across the city of Toronto, we don't anticipate any adverse impacts to the adjacent lands. Next slide, please. Is it desirable? From a very, use of the employment generator and the economic generator that bingo halls produce, we believe that it's classified as an employment use. That's notwithstanding the fact that there's 25,000 square feet of office uses being proposed in the site, as well as just given the location of the site. It's at the periphery of an employment area, fronting onto 3 major roads, good connectivity for patrons of a bingo hall, and in that respect, we believe it's desirable and appropriate in this location. Next slide, please. Is it in keeping with the general intent and purpose of the bylaw? As I've mentioned, we're seeking to harmonize the use throughout the existing use that's permitted on the western half of the site throughout the entirety of the site. As I've mentioned, historically, bingo halls have been located in employment areas, and we're maintaining the existing provisions of the subject site as we're adaptively reusing the existing building. Next slide. Is it in keeping with the general of the OP? So as I've mentioned, similar built form. Similar built form. There's no changes being proposed. Lottery and Gaming Commission facilities have always been, or historically been, located in employment areas. It's keeping with the general intent of the core employment and general employment areas within the city, just given the employment opportunities and economic benefits that it will generate. It will house about 60 jobs, and Delta Bingo is proposing to relocate its head office to this facility, and that's the reason for the 25,000 square feet of office. And as I've mentioned, just given the general location of it being at the periphery of the employment area with good connectivity, we think it's an appropriate from an OP perspective. Next slide, please. So just to give you a little bit of backup and history on the file, in November 9th, 2021, there was discussion about adding bingo halls into employment areas, and it's received support, and a motion was made on the floor by Mayor John Tory and a number of other councillors who spoke in support of that, to refer the item back to the chief planner to introduce bingo halls into the employment area designation. An update was recently brought forward in April of 2022, and staff are in phase of the work, but no decision has been made and no real update was provided at that time.
Okay, thank you. You could please wrap up because you're over your allotted time.
Yep, that was my presentation, so I appreciate your time.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, does anyone have any questions? We're going to hear from, I guess, Councillor Nunziata in support. Any questions at this point for Mr. Albanese?
Just a couple of quick questions, if I may, Mr. Chair. The western part of the site, is that a site-specific bylaw that permits the bingo hall use now?
No, it's permitted in the historic Etobicoke 11737 bylaw under the Class 1 industrial zone. Bingo halls are permitted.
By virtue of it on Kipling, or?
Not sure.
Okay, that's okay. That's okay. And has that site has never been used as a bingo hall?
No, it's a former McCarthy site.
Okay, and there is a portion of that western property that is not part of the bingo hall. There's another use there that actually fronts onto Evans, correct?
Correct. It's also owned by the applicant.
It is. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other further questions, Mr. Palmer?
Yeah, a question for the applicant. I'm referring to the economic development comments on the application previously, July 15th, 2022. And then in the last paragraph, they refer to the applicant making a conversion request for this property. I assume that's, well, no, I'm not going to make any assumptions on it. I don't really consider the use of this as a bingo hall as a conversion from an employment use, but I'm curious about this separate application, what the status of it is.
So the application that I'm aware of through the chair was made in, I believe, November 8th. And the item that I mentioned on November 9th, which was brought forward to council, required complete application for site plan to be heard in order for and bingo halls to be permitted with or considered within employment areas. So an application for site plan was made back then. Now, whether or not you're referring to another application, I don't have that information in front of me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, so a question for staff is, so can we take it that the community planning memo, does that continue to, you didn't get anything saying it continues to apply, even though they've eliminated the parking related variances? There was the use variance, which seemed to be the nexus of planning's concern back. So what's with the, Mr. Albanese, is your position that planning is still opposed?
We did not receive an updated planning report post deferral, and we haven't really heard any update from planning staff, even with the elimination of the 2 parking variances. We went through the zoning review process and confirmed with city planning that no updated staff report would be provided for us.
Yeah, so again, in a second application in a row that deals with the convergence of, you know, heavy uses, later uses, employment uses, industrial uses, and things are changing. More and more people are locating, dealing with the last time, office type uses in industrial areas or buildings, because the parking's free for one, and you don't have to have hallways and elevator shafts and things like that necessarily. So this is another one. So the city's condition, we don't officially know, but if you read what their concerns were, they say extend permit of bingo hall use, which may deter future in this industry from locating, could attract similar uses to locate with an existing industrial building. But here we have a bit of a different zoning, I take it. So that's just a comment on that, as to clarifying what the position is of planning. So I guess let's hear from Councilor Nunziata, who is anxiously waiting to make her deputation.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, Councilor.
Okay, thank you. And I'm not the local councillor for Evans Avenue.
Okay.
But I'm speaking on this because bingo is very dear to me. I've been involved with bingos for the last 40 years. When I was mayor, I used to run bingos for local charities. And Delta Bingo, years ago, when they located at St. Clair and Doe Weston Road, that became part of the York Southwestern. And I can tell you that over the years, my experience with bingo is that I have helped thousands of charities in my ward, specifically seniors clubs, baseball, hockey clubs, all sort of clubs raise money for their club. Because as you know, it's very difficult for some of these sports clubs and senior clubs to operate without raising money and getting revenue. So over the years, I have raised thousands and thousands of dollars for charities, in particular in my ward. So recently, as you know, the St. Clair Avenue study along St. Clair and Keele, Delta Bingo at St. Clair Avenue, part of their property was expropriated because we're widening St. Clair Avenue. We have the GO station and the smart track going up at St. Clair. So they had no choice but to relocate. So they've had to leave that site, and they purchased this site on Evans Avenue. Now, when this issue came forward at council, we had thousands of charities sign a petition in support of Delta Bingo relocating, because they were very concerned that if Delta Bingo did not relocate to Evans Avenue, they wouldn't have the opportunity to run the bingos and raise the funds that they have for many, many years. So we received thousands of names on a petition. The mayor put forward a motion in November, because I did express to the mayor, and the mayor also met with some of the charities. And he was very concerned, because of course we have to help our charities, and we need to have bingos in order for our charities to raise revenue for their club. So he did add the bingo halls into his motion that he moved in November, because he was unanimous as far as, and all accounts was unanimous, like we should allow bingo halls in employment areas. And what we don't want is we don't want thousands of our charities not being able to raise revenue for their club. And as well as they also employ hundreds of staff working in their halls. And a lot of the staff that are working at the bingo halls are single moms that are trying to raise money, second jobs, because I did that as a single parent many, many years ago before I got into politics. That's how I was able to actually pay for my son's fees, for swimming fees, is run bingos. So the reason I'm here is because I'm very, very involved with charities, very, very involved in bingos. And I think it would be it would be a disaster if they can't relocate the hall that they have, where they have hundreds of charities. And Delta Bingo has been able to raise over $150 million for local Ontario charities. And if they're not able to do that at this site, we're putting a lot of these charities out on the street. And unfortunately, the city won't be able to compensate them for the revenue that they need to keep their clubs running. And that's why I'm here, and I've taken time to be here today, is that it's very important to me, very important to all the charities in the city. And I urge the members of the committee to please support this application. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. Anyone have any questions for Councillor Nunziata? Okay, if not, okay. So no need to go back to Mr. Albanese, because that was comment and very supportive of the. So if there are no follow-up questions, let's take it into committee for comment on a motion.
I'd like to make a comment that, one of the things I think that is probably the most important thing as part of this application is that it's not just a bingo hall. It is actually going to be office space for, I would assume, a considerable number of people that work for Delta Bingo. So in that respect, I do believe that it's a fit for this area, for this E-zone area, and I will wholeheartedly support this application.
Okay, so it's a motion to approve the application. There's no conditions. The seconder for that motion. Mr. Kumarik, all three hands went up. So I take it it's unanimous. The application is approved. By show of hands. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Albanese, and thank you, Councilor Nunziata. And thank you, members, and especially staff. We are now, all we need is a motion to adjourn.
Oh, I'm happy to make that motion too.
Okay, seconded by Mr. Palmer. Okay, we're done. Okay, thank you, everyone, and I guess we'll see you all next time.
Thank you, members.
Thank you, staff.
Okay. Thank you.